Welcome back to Quarantine Questions with Jack Heron. This is episode 9 with Joseph Gill, my main man from Minnesota. How you doing today, Joe?
I'm doing lovely. A little bit colder up here than down where you're at, but we make do up here.
I'm sure, man. So Joseph is one of the premier analytical minds when it comes to basketball. He runs his company, Mercenary Analytics, and you've been working with some other people too, right? Who have you been working with?
Yeah. There's this group down in Texas that I've been working with these past couple months, and they're more in the analytic. So Mercenary Analytics is basically just a consulting group. We like to work with players directly, but we also do a little bit of college coaching, a little bit of work for agents, a little bit of work for other people in the peripherals like money men. This group down in Texas, ePlay, they're trying to get pretty much, if it can be quantified in the basketball space and someone can get value out of it, they're trying to get in there. So like, you might see them on the circuit in the upcoming years, like helping out younger kids. You might see them helping out, with like college coaching, college recruiting. You might see them helping out agencies, which I've been working for them on their behalf these past couple months. So yeah, it's a really exciting time for analytics because it's becoming more broadly accepted, and it's becoming also more palatable and more, easier to digest for, like the person who's kind of coming in cold. So that's the group down in Texas I'm also working with now, and, just really excited to have it up and going now.
Yeah, so I think a lot of people believe that analytics people aren't basketball people; they're just number crunchers and math whizzes and things like that. But you actually played basketball, right? You played in high school and in college. Just tell me a little bit about that. Like, how did you get into analytics through your career with basketball?
Yeah, so I fell butt backwards into it. I always tell people where I was really blessed up in Minneapolis. We got a very great high school that I went to, Benil St. Margaret's. In my graduating class, we had 6 guys getting D1 looks. 4 of them actually ended up going just in my class alone. And, for Virginia, that might be, no big potatoes. But, in Minnesota, that was a pretty rare thing, even nowadays, especially about 10 years ago when this was all happening. Unfortunately, though, I got some really great coaching when I was there. Sanjay Lumpkin was with the Park College, I think they're Skyhawks, Bayhawks. His stepdad is Jim Peterson. He was always around. Isaiah Zierden, his dad, coached for the Wizards for many years as an assistant coach. He was always around giving tips. And so, it was a very conducive basketball environment to learning and growing. And unfortunately for me, I tore my ACL when I was 17. And I just kind of never really got fully healthy again. And so, even back then, so this would have been 2011, that's kind of when I started reading up on just like very basic basketball analytics, like, materials where like, the idea of like a shot chart that you could accurately, represent, in a broad sense, the point value of every single shot from every single location on the floor. That was like mind blowing to me back then. And I was always kind of mathematically inclined as a kid, but I never liked math, which I'm sure most people can relate to, if not almost anybody. And I remember I was reading, a baseball analytics book when I was a kid, and I was always kind of like, this is really interesting. Like, I wish that it could be applied to basketball. And then it took me until I was about 18 or 19 or 20 when I was in college and, sitting on the bench because knee injuries kept flaring up. In the last 4 years of my career, I played in 3 sanctioned games. I played in 0 my senior high school. I played in 3 my freshman year in college. I played in 0 my sophomore year. And then I ripped up my knee in fall workouts during my junior year. And so I just had to hang it up. But I started reading up on, just like the general philosophies like Daryl Morey, Dean Oliver's Basketball on Paper, all that stuff. And it's funny because at first I was like most people in the basketball space first, like, dude, I'm a knockdown 18-foot shooter. Like, I love posting up. You're going to tell me that, like, corner threes are the key to basketball. Like, screw you guys. So, I try to use my mathematical skills to disprove analytics. And I always tell people it's very hard to disprove math using math. And, there was an acclimation period, but generally I slowly started gravitating more towards the analytical side of things as far as like, the eye test versus the numbers, that false dichotomy, if that's real, I slid across that spectrum. And then, I always knew that I wanted to work in basketball. I thought I'd like to be a scout or I'd like to be a high school basketball coach. And, I generally started just incorporating more and more analytics into my work. And the next thing I know, it's pretty much like the main focus of my work is that I'm the guy who can, like pull the important practical numbers, but also explain them in a basketball sense that I win people over. And so, kind of give you the spark, I'm sure you don't want a 3-hour podcast talking about, month by month, but that was the general trajectory, and so I've been doing that now for the last 4 years or so. And frankly, I mean, as much as my knee hurts day to day, I wouldn't really trade it for much because I do love what I do.
So what do you say to people who have this thought that you guys aren't basketball people? I mean, are most of the people that you deal with in analytics also, former basketball players or coaches or things like that?
No, I would say to them that there's a reason why that exists. And there like in every single situation, there's always people who break that mold. I believe Brent Barry, of course, long NBA career, slam dunk champion. I think he won the 3-point shootout as well. I believe he started off in the Spurs front office in an analytical role. He's now moved up the ladder there to a more broad title. I believe he's a VP of something. Even Shane Battier, he was always kind of like an analytically oriented player. He was one of the first guys who was very open about, like loving synergy, like just digesting the numbers. And he works for the Heat in that capacity too. So, I mean, there's always going to be guys that are much better cases than a guy who played 3 games of D3 basketball to kind of point to be like, those guys really hoops. But, I was able to climb up the ladder just high enough before all this stuff started happening to kind of understand, like the game behind the game. As far as recruiting and all that. And then of course, like the interpersonal dynamics on the floor and, being the 5th best player on the floor on a really good high school team. It's a great education for, how do I go about explaining what I see to other players and stuff like that. So, that stigma, to kind of go back to your original question, that stigma exists and I totally understand it. And frankly, I think it's our responsibility in the analytics community to be, more open and trying to win people over to our position because, I always really recoil at any idea this is about being right or wrong. I think it's about making players better. And, if you're in this to try to, thumb your nose at people who spent their entire lives playing basketball, who gave their soul to the game over 30, 40, 50 years, and you're trying to, prove that you're smarter than them because you studied it, never played it for 3 or 4 years, I don't want to be your friend. I mean, you might be right, but I don't know if that's the person I want in my network. I'd probably prefer to have the person that, is a kinder person in that regard who might, in this example, would probably be the guy who's been trying to help kids for the last 30 years. So I think that, that stigma exists for a reason. And, I'm trying to help break that mold, but at the end of the day, it's not a basketball player's responsibility to, accept all analytics with open arms. It's our responsibility to try to make, compelling cases and make the human connection that wins them over.
So you talk about making players better. I mean, so you're not like me. You don't work with programs typically. You work with individuals and players. So what do you do to try to help players and like what does your typical work with a player look like?
Yeah. So, I mean, like I generally, I give out some varying forms of trial periods or, favors to friends, skill trainers, agents, anything like that. I can give you a report that kind of breaks down exactly what's going on with your game. But for my clients with Merc, what I do is that I go in and do a spreadsheet. I think you've seen one before where, I literally go through their entire season. I track every single possession that they have. And I've got about 20 to 25 different variables, depending on play type, that I track that can then be used to try to make a compelling narrative to the player that then can, change the way that they frame their basketball game mentally. Like for example, a player that I've been working with this past year, really smart guy. He's got a great right-handed hook. He goes with so often that I invested a lot of time into trying to understand exactly, like where the break-even point is, where, if you're within, if you're in this situation, with this defender on you, this far away from the hoop, go to it. If you're this far away from the hoop with this type of defender on you, in this situation in the shot clock, don't go to it. So basically, I mean, I'm never trying to reinvent the wheel. So much of analytics seems to be bogged down and, almost behind a closed door of education in the sense where, if you didn't take high school calculus or above, you can't understand it. And to me, that's just always a recipe for disaster. I want my numbers to be, understandable and actionable. It doesn't matter how correct I am, if I can't win a player over into believing that this has merit and this is something that they can tweak in their game, what's the point of tracking this? I could have the secret to writing the greatest novel of all time. If I can't write myself and I can't convince a writer to write it, what's the point of all that knowledge? So, it's as much as it is in the numbers and the data tracking, the real groundwork I think is laid in knowing what to track and then, trying to make that connection with the player so that they understand like, this isn't about me trying to like one up you. This is about me just trying to help you make more money, and if that's not what drives you, I'm going to try and figure out what drives you and I'm going to try and align my analytics with what drives you.
So what do you think, what are the most frustrating stigmas that maybe the average fan has toward analytics?
I mean, the one that really kind of seems to bug me the most is the quote just numbers, and that has a cousin, and that cousin is named "You can prove anything with analytics." The just numbers thing is kind of a weird argument to me because it's always kind of like, numbers are never, unless it's a random number generator and you click a button, it's just like, a list of 19, 81, 4. Those numbers, they mean nothing. I made them up. But, if I were to say, my weight or my height, that is a number. That number is indicative of something that exists in the actual world. And so, for analytics, like, yeah, you can pull pretty much anything and twist the numbers together and see if it makes sense. In most cases, it won't. But that isn't an argument against the numbers that do have actual pertinence when it comes to playing basketball. That actually can help you win basketball games. And the secret is identifying which of in the sea of numbers, which 20 to 25 variables are worth tracking. Everything else, yeah, those are kind of just numbers. Like the amount of time, the amount of steps you take, before you go for a rebound, probably not a number that is going to be indicative of anything that's useful, right? It's a number, but it's not one that we can use. But how many points per possession a team is scoring, that is not just a number. That is something that is very one-to-one related to winning the game of basketball, which is a possession by possession war. So that one really that one bugs me probably more than it should. But I also kind of realize that, like, it's not an argument against analytics. It's an argument against how analytics is portrayed to the person. It's if I'm just throwing a number at you, if I say, like, the Rockets' offensive rating is 112, you probably know what offensive rating is, but someone at home, that's gibberish to them. But if I say the Rockets score 112 points per 100 possessions when they're on the floor, the NBA average is 105. All of a sudden, I've given you a frame of reference. You kind of understand that 7 points per 100 possessions might not sound like a lot, but when you start thinking about it, then all of a sudden it's like, wait, hold on, 7 points per 100 possessions, but 100 possessions in the game. I guess it isn't a very important number, and I'm not sure if that number is the accurate one, but it's just one I may have off the top of my head. So, once again, I think it all comes back to, how are we framing analytics? How are we discussing analytics? All the stigmas that analytics currently has probably could be absolved if we operated differently in this space, in my opinion.
So, I mean, I think a lot of the stuff that I see people come at you on Twitter, and people always come at me about it because I have tried to learn more and more about the game, is, the mid-range shot, the pull-ups, things like that. Me and you had a long talk about floaters and things like that. So which I guess what I'm trying to say is, which one of these things bothers you the most? Is it the old head that's like, man, the mid-range is not dead? That tries to sit here and say Michael Jordan averaged this many by shooting all mid-range shots? What bothers you the most about, like, the old thought process of basketball?
I nothing really kind of bothers me about the thought process. It's more the people who aren't really willing to have a conversation about it. The people who are entrenched, because can I argue that Michael Jordan didn't take a lot of mid-ranges? No. Can I argue that he's not the best? If not, depending on how you have him, I have him 1. Other people that might have him 2 or 3. Can I argue that he's not, in that stratosphere because of those shots? Absolutely not. I think that I always said nothing exists in basketball in a vacuum except for the final score. So there's a reason why everything happens the way that it does. It's kind of one of those situations where are you going to give lenience to the people who might not understand what you understand? And that works both ways. It's a two-way street on the argument. And are you then going to make an effort to try to win that person over to your side and perspective? And then also, can you be open to being wrong? I think one of the reasons why we get along so well is because, like, we'll argue about stuff, and it's not really even an argument; it's more of a discussion. But at the end of the day, like, if I can't win you over and you can't win me over, we always kind of come to the conclusion of, like, we'll see. It's fun. It's supposed to be an interesting thing, and like, it's never about who's right or wrong. Both of us are curious enough, and we love basketball if we're going to follow up on our own sake. And then it's on us to kind of tweak our thought process and try to learn. If there was a situation where we were proven wrong, and I think one of the things that really bothers me about analytics, other professionals, is that, like, they are so adamant that we can't throw anybody a bone. I got into a long argument with D'Angelo Russell's skill trainer Dion Lee a while ago, where I was kind of basically saying, like, he was saying you can shoot 55-60% in the mid range, and I was saying you can't. And then we got on the phone, we had a discussion. I'm like, oh, actually, I do agree with him. He's not saying you can shoot 55 to 60% on all mid-range shots. He's saying in some selective instances. And then he, of course, trains his clients to try to seek those out and maximize them. And every other shot that's not efficient, disregard them. And, I told him at the end of the discussion, I'm like, if D'Angelo finishes the year above 50% from mid-range, I'll sing your praises. And lo and behold, he did. And so I was more than happy to go back and, and tweet and be like, I was wrong here. Congratulations. I truthfully was rooting for both of them, because why would you ever root for someone to fail? And then, the thing that can bother me, though, is that on one side, analytics is so at times unwilling to throw, to admit when, in certain instances, the prevailing macro strategies of the game can be disproven. On the other hand, the people who then hold on to those for dear life and refuse to relinquish them, even, knowing their outlier scenarios, that is equally frustrating. So yeah, to kind of answer your question, I mean, like, entrenched opinions and this idea that everyone is either absolutely 100% correct or absolutely 100% wrong, that bothers me more than anybody who liked that Jordan made mid-range shots, because who doesn't like a mid-range shot? It's beautiful.
So, I mean, as somebody who understands the game and watches and studies the game, you're not somebody who's just over here crunching numbers, which is something I'm trying to get people to understand. How do you kind of balance the numerical data with the eye test, with what you see and how talented some guy is?
Yeah, and as I said before, I think it's a false dichotomy, because, if your numbers don't align with what you're seeing on the floor, you better dig way deeper to try to make sense of how it all works together. For me, the numbers do take precedence, because the numbers is a statement of fact. It is for whatever we're tracking. This is what happened in this many inputs, and that doesn't mean that it's going to be that way forever. It doesn't mean that it's going to be that way even the next 20 samples, but it's worth knowing, and adjusting our thoughts about certain actions as the numbers come in. But, there are certain situations where, like I said, nothing exists in basketball in a vacuum except for the final score, where, basketball isn't like baseball. Baseball's a linear game. You can't send your best batter up to bat 10 times in a row in baseball. It's going to happen in a systematic way. And basketball isn't that. You can tweak your strategies to make certain guys in certain situations more often than the person in their position would otherwise be. A good example of that is Russell Westbrook. Russell Westbrook in different systems would average, very, very different, assists, rebounds, points. The important part of analytics is trying to mend those different data streams into the idea that it's not just the one person you're capturing. There's also 4 other people you're not capturing in any individual metric. Merging those streams together, finding the team-oriented metrics that then align with what you're trying to show, and then examining everything. So, for example, a great example of this is Jaylen Brown when he was at Cal for that 1 year. A lot of analytics guys disliked him and said that he was massively inefficient. And I said, well, look at the defenses he's seen. He's seen pre-collapse defenses where he's not that great of a shooter. We know that. He's very strong. He likes to get downhill, but he can't get all the way to the rim, because every time he takes one step across the arc, there's 2 7-footers standing at both blocks. And so, it's a thing, like, I can't say, beyond a shadow of a doubt that Jaylen Brown is going to be incredible at finishing, in the NBA, but I also can't say that he's going to be as bad as he was in college. I got to try to find a way to make a nuanced opinion that merges, his poor individual efficiency numbers with the overall team, aesthetic. And I can't be too optimistic if I want him to be good. I can't be too pessimistic if I think that I want to be, right in a stronger take that he's not efficient, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. So you work a lot, in the NBA realm of things. You introduced me to all the summer league stuff. I appreciate you for that. But, it's pretty much accepted by all teams now. They all have some form of analytics that they use. But which ones would you say do the best job of using analytics?
Well, it's tough. And I mean, we had a conversation about this previous, it's hard. Analytics is an information economy. As much as I'd love to come out here and I'd love to show everyone my spreadsheets and be like, yo, this is what I found. I understand that, if I'm doing that, that's my proprietary, that's how I pay for where I am right now. So I pay for this hat. I got this shirt for free. So, but I had to fly to Las Vegas for this shirt. My life is supplemented by the fact that I found proprietary data and I'm able to leverage it. Likewise for teams are never going to walk anybody through their thought process, but it's like poker. We can kind of go through and, based on how they judge people at a certain point, based on the information they had available to them. And not all the information is known to us, obviously. We can kind of see which teams are failing at least in the short term, it's kind of much harder to see which teams are passing, because you can pass through sheer luck, you can pass through a process, you can also fail through a process in the short term, but if it's a good process, you'll eventually win in the long run. And I think a great example of this is that the Warriors and the Rockets. The Rockets are so overtly analytical, right? Like no one can even argue. And one of my favorite things to do, because I'm for this group down in Dallas, we're part of my roles there is to create a lecture series to try to help make analytics much more friendly for high school coaches and college coaches and other people, within the basketball space. So I've done a lot of historical research into, the history of sports statistics, where these come from, and instances of them. And one thing that's very interesting that, you ask people, like, where did analytics come from? They're like, Moneyball, which, started roughly in the late 1990s. But what people don't know, and this is kind of inside baseball here, but Sandy Koufax, who was considered to be one of the, if not one of the best pitchers ever, the best pitcher ever, he went from a guy who in his first 4 years was not considered to be anything special. He didn't even start every single one of the games he appeared in the 1960 season. But between 1960 and I believe it was 1961, one of the first ever analytics guys in sports, Alan Roth of the Dodgers, was able to impart to him the knowledge of how important throwing the first pitch of every single at-bat for a strike was. And from that moment on, Sandy Koufax was never left out of an all-star game, won, I think it was 3 Cy Youngs and won an MVP. And so that right there, that's 60 years ago. Analytics made a massive impact in a player's trajectory and then in a team's trajectory. But if you ask almost anybody, if you ask almost anybody, what makes Sandy Koufax great? It's the curveball, it's the fastball, it's it was the consistency of delivery window where no one could tell what he was going to throw. And it's kind of funny to think about, like, how deep you have to dive to uncover the fact that what probably spurned that incredible turnaround was analytics. Because, and I bring this up to bring it back to basketball, the Golden State Warriors, as they were going for their titles, and they won 67 games that first year with Steve Kerr, everyone was saying, they're too far in analytics. A jump shooting team can't win a championship. And then when the team does, all of a sudden it's like, Klay Thompson takes mid ranges, and Harrison Barnes can take mid ranges. Then they brought in Dave West, like, David West takes mid ranges, and Sean Livingston takes mid ranges, and it's the moving of the goalposts for the people who are anti-analytical. It's hard to ever make a universal argument over a long stretch that the teams that aren't successful don't embrace analytics. I can even go back to the KG Celtics. Part of the reason of their success was they had an analytics staff that was enabled, and they realized that KG didn't play very well over long spurts, and it was best to play him in short spurts. And so it's kind of weird how and this is a hard way to answer questions. I say the Warriors probably do it best, but the Warriors do it so well that you can almost they're playing with house money, where it's okay to have Sean Livingston take mid ranges. Kevin Durant, we all know there's not a lot of wrong answers in his offensive game. He can take whatever shot he wants, basically. It's probably going to be a good shot as he's put in the hours, and he's as skilled as he is. So it's hard for me to say, but I respect Daryl Morey. I've got nothing but respect for the people making the basketball decisions within the Rockets. But I definitely think that the team that's able to blend it the best appears to be the Warriors.
Well, you bring up Daryl Morey and the Rockets, and how everybody at first was so against what they were doing. Oh my God, James Harden can't take 33s a game. Like, right. What's he gonna do? He missed 27. Everybody wanted to jump all over him for that. But then they trade Clint Capella, and they're going with this small ball, what they're calling the death lineup now, which Golden State did really well with Draymond Green. It's almost like it's come full circle. Now everybody's saying, oh no, you can't have a 7-footer that sits in the middle now, because look at how well the Rockets and the Warriors have done without it. So it's kind of funny how, they'll move it one way to the anti-analytics people will move it one way, and then the people who are for analytics are like, oh no, look at it this way too. It's almost like an argument that nobody can come in the middle for.
No, and no one, and through those lenses, no one can ever win, because basketball's an adapting game. I always tell people basketball's a game of markets, and right now, back in the 1990s, the market for a 7-foot dude who didn't do anything but was 7 feet tall and stood by the rim was considered to be a market you had to fulfill. And then all of a sudden, Draymond Green comes along. It's like a 6'6" guy, can be not only a center, but the best center in the league. Because he can defend these 7-foot guys, and they can't post up, because posting up this comes from a former back to the basket center. Posting up is very hard to score efficiently on, and you're standing at the most important real estate for your teammates to enter into, clogging up the lane. But yeah, it's tough, because you're always going to be able to find certain elements of, like you can't always have profit. If we were running a business, there's no way that we can run a business where we're just inventing money. There's always going to be some amount of unoptimal, amount of activity. And in basketball, that's probably going to be at the end of the shot clock. The efficiencies of shots drops, and so all of a sudden a mid-range shot is much more, is much more palatable than when the shot clock run to zero where it's a turnover. So there's always going to be a value in having a dude who can create a shot. The question is, are we overvaluing it or undervaluing it? And it's funny you bring up the Rockets too, because that was actually a move that I disliked. I thought it was placating Westbrook's play style at the detriment of the team, because I never thought that Clint Capella is a guy that's unplayable. I thought that he's being asked to do something that he's not able to do. And the team, the Rockets, in back-to-back series with the Warriors in 2 years, were not able to adjust from Clint Capella being taken away, not the fact that Clint Capella was taken out of the game, if that makes sense. I always thought that he was such a strong crutch for them that when he was taken away and all of a sudden you're not, throwing the lob to him every single 10 pick and rolls, when that was completely taken away, the Rockets were almost unable to react to it,
So, there's always this is something I didn't plan on asking you, but I want to ask you. There's always this talk about the different eras and how things are. Who is the guy that you think maybe in the 90s or even before that was way ahead of their time with and would maybe fit into the way that it's played now even better?
Oh, I mean, there's a very easy answer that we all know. Anybody who shoots threes, anybody who shoots threes would have been, paid so much better 20 years, looking forward. In today's age, JJ Redick was a max player for a year. Someone like BJ Armstrong, who made an all-star game in Jordan's, emerging from Jordan's shadow, but never really had that gigantic payday, he'd probably be a very valued resource. It's funny to think about. Steve Kerr is the all-time leader in three-point percentage in NBA history. And the amount of surplus value, even the fact he wasn't a great defender, even though he was a smart player, the amount of surplus value that he gave to his teams, there's a reason why his teams, Jordan helps obviously, but he also won championships without Jordan. There's a reason why players like that, the PPP battle, the points per possession battle of basketball is so important. Every single time that you have a guy who can skew that your way, it doesn't matter if he's a max contract player or if he's playing on a minimum deal. He's probably adding a lot to your chances of winning the game. And, if he's a minimum player in the 90s, he might not be in today's age. But, to piggyback off that, the three-point shooting is so obvious. But the players who would probably do better in today's era of basketball versus, older eras are, undersized guys who can defend. Size was viewed as such an important thing. And, it's hard because, you think about when you're scouting a game, a center can play pretty mediocrely against a matchup. But if he has a thunderous slam dunk or two of them, you're going to remember that, and it's probably going to go in your write-up. And, the best are able to merge that with, he slammed the ball twice and it was awesome, but he had kind of a mediocre game regardless. But it's so hard to dissect, in my opinion, for even the best basketball minds, the emotional component of basketball, which is I love the game. I love slam dunks. I love watching, power versus power against the actual, wages of wins. How are you winning the game? It's so hard to merge those streams. And, we see it all the time with kids who are hyped up, overhyped, go off to college and then fall flat. And you break it down they're highlight players. They had incredible highs, but that was also, offset by their lows, which were much more voluminous and, much more, much easier to reproduce at a higher level because they didn't want to reproduce it. They were forced into reproducing it. And the highlight plays are much harder to reproduce at the high level. So, it all kind of comes back to the connected point of, tracking, tracking is generally just for the best because it's more information. And then, in the 1990s, the tracking was pretty poor. And the guys who stand to benefit the most were the guys who were aesthetically the least pleasing, but still productive.
So, when we were in summer league, we had multiple conversations about evaluating talent and things beyond just analytics. One of those things we talked about was what NBA teams do the best job in evaluating talent, maybe finding talent in later rounds or under the radar guys. Which teams do you think do the best job in the NBA evaluating talent?
I mean, once again, kind of a cop-out answer, but the teams at the top, it's kind of a self-answering question. And to give you a specific, I thought it was really, I think it's really cool to assess what was the Spurs' big edge when they were building their dynasty. The Spurs' big edge was that they realized that overseas players can be just as good as Americans in a different way before anybody else did, and they hammered it before the market caught up to them. The Toronto Raptors last year, what did they realize? They realized that that the number one thing that teams pay for in restricted free agency, it's not production, it's draft position. So, a player with the same production as the third overall pick is always going to be paid higher than the guy who was the 30th overall pick. And is that smart? No. And so what did the Raptors do? They built an entire team without a single lottery pick, because all these guys are still anchored to even when you're a max player, you're probably still anchored to some degree, to your draft position. They built a team of guys that they could get on slight discounts, and that edge extrapolated over 15 players added up to a championship. I'm not sure if they were the best team in basketball last year from just a pure, healthy versus healthy standpoint, but they put themselves in a position to win the championship, and they did, and no one can ever take that away from them. So, the teams that are the best at evaluating talent, in my opinion, are the ones who are able to identify undervalued players and then hammer it. The teams that are the worst are the ones that fall in love with film. If you fall in love with like a Wes Johnson guy who's long and like, oh, if we can just get through to him, if we can just change him, if we can just make him, have that much of a quicker release, be this much better of a dribbler, care this much more about basketball. And in my personal opinion, if you don't care about basketball at the time you get to the NBA, what is going to make you care? If you don't care about, and I'm going to name a name here, if you're Andrew Wiggins and they give you, $30 million and you're the first overall pick and you don't care about basketball, what the heck is $150 million going to do? You've already made it made. You're incentivizing the behavior that you want to see continue. You're subsidizing the behavior you want to see continue. And so, I'm much more of a guy who'd be willing to bet on dudes, and I do bet professionally on dudes who care about the game, who seek out my services. And frankly, if you're a little bit undersized and you're a little bit, slow, I probably like you more because it means that you got a greater upside and you're able to think the game and you care about the game on a greater level than dudes who have all the tools and kind of just sit on it.
Yeah, I was I wouldn't say I was shocked, but when I went to Minnesota for the Final Four and I heard how you guys talked about Andrew Wiggins and some of the players on the T-Wolves, I mean, I think that they're one of those teams that maybe has fallen on, some of the stuff you talked about. They go after guys who are natural athletes, guys who the game may become super easy to at lower levels. But, you look at a guy like Johnny Flynn or a guy like Andrew Wiggins, then you look at a team like maybe the Bucks or a team like the Heat who have done great jobs in getting guys that were overlooked and guys who end up being better. I mean, who would have thought Kendrick Nunn would have been one of the best rookies in the NBA this year? Nobody thought that.
Right. And then, I got to say for poor Johnny Flynn, he was the guy who tried very hard and had a hip injury at the end of his rookie year and just never was the same. And I also I think part of the reason why I'm able to get through the players, do I personally, it's like, I'm not, as I'm from Minnesota. I'm not a fan of any team. It's unprofessional in my opinion to have a rooting interest, beyond my clients. Do I root for certain players I don't work for more than others? Absolutely. Because for example, I think Steph Curry has a lot of it figured out as far as how to live a happy life. I want my guys to look at Steph and be like, I want to be like that. But, for Andrew Wiggins, I named him because frankly, it's much less unfair to name Andrew Wiggins than it would be to name a dude who was like the 50th overall pick in the draft who is not set for life. Do I blame Andrew Wiggins for signing that contract? Heck no. Dude, Jack, if you want to give me $150 million to, if I promise to mow your lawn and I still get that money even if I don't mow your lawn, I'm signing that contract. And if your lawn doesn't get mowed, that's on you, man. I don't blame Andrew for that. He made a decision that it wasn't worth it to him, and he got paid a lot of money regardless. Like, who cares? Not my money. But yeah, so it is, it's the thing. Like, I don't ever dislike a player who gets overpaid. I'm more like ownership. Would you rather pay Andrew Wiggins $150 million? Or would you rather have two enabled analytics guys in your front office to help you save that money?
Yeah, I mean, and that's something I've talked with a few people about. We all blame the coaches or the players that get overpaid, but we got to put something on the front office.
Oh, it's all, and it's so, I think the reason why I think fans subconsciously don't ever want to blame ownership because you can't make ownership sell.
Yeah.
Can't. And for better or for worse, the Knicks are stuck with James Dolan. For better or for worse, I can name other owners here. For better or for worse, you're stuck with that owner. So it's just like, you almost are incentivized to not believe it's the owner. And it's like, oh, he just can't find the right guy. It's like, oh, he cares. And that's part of the reason why, I generally have a very love-hate relationship with fans. Like, I'm happy people love the sport that I love and I've given my life to. But, I don't want to argue with you about your owner cares so much when I know that your owner has not been in the facility in 3 months. That your owner has, has pissed away all the goodwill within the community, that they've hired people just to announce they hired them and then put them in a back room and never listen to them. Like if you want to keep re-upping for season tickets because you want to believe your owner's fine, that's fine. Don't think that you're entitled to my time to argue that your owner is great when I know for a fact your owner sucks.
So I'm going to switch it here. What is something that you believe analytics can't measure?
And there's a lot, because I mean, like, one of the things I always tell people is that, like, if it's quantifiable directly, I'll quantify it. If it's not quantifiable directly, I'll try my best to quantify it. But the intangibles, which I think are probably overvalued, as far as, like, do I want a player who's tough versus a player who's not tough? I probably want the player who's tough. But would I rather have a player who's not tough but produces versus a player who is tough and doesn't produce?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like, in an ideal world, I would encourage the kid who's tough to get better and take the other kid's spot, and I also understand that there's very much a pitfall to taking a kid who's not tough, but produces, because in a big game he might shut down. But yes, I mean, intangibles, as far as, like, toughness, as far as, like, desire, that's very hard. That's almost impossible to track, in my opinion. But if it's important in basketball, it will show up in some numbers. So there are always surrogate numbers you can point to, as far as, like, a guy who really cares. A guy, like, if, like, this is not a statistic that's tracked, in the public domain, but, like, chase down blocks. A dude who cares and is tough is going to have more chase down blocks than a dude of equal abilities who, is not as tough or doesn't care as much. So I think what analytics really does a poor job of tracking, is those intangibles to a degree, but also, if so many coaches default to coach speak on toughness and as far as, like, executing. And I think that that's kind of not really even a sword, but more of a shield, because, I can tell you this, man, I've watched a lot of basketball in my day, and I've watched a lot of tough teams play. And the only real variable that seems to matter is which team is better. And sometimes teams that aren't as good are tougher, and it doesn't matter. So, at a certain point, every single coach in America talks about toughness and executing when they lose, but none of them seem to talk about when they win. So, yeah, I just hijacked your question, because I'm trying to find a middle ground. Like, I think that you can track most things with analytics if given enough time and resources. If not given those resources, you're not going to be able to. But, if you wanted me to track, how tough I thought kids were in Virginia, I could develop a system that would be very economically and financially implausible for you to invest into, but could probably do it.
So outside of the obvious, more threes and more spacing and stuff like that, how do you think analytics has changed the game, and where do you think it's moving the game toward right now?
I have a graph that I think I even showed it to you, where it's a simple 3-level bar graph, and it's a PPP of one of my clients who was a very good mid-range scorer, and it says PPP at the rim, it says PPP from 3, and then down here it's a U, it says PPP from mid-range. And I think that people I think part of the reason why people don't really like analytics is that they're told by talking heads every single year, like, this is it, analytics is done, like, it's gone too far. And it's like, no, actually, analytics has a lot more just on this one issue of mid-range shots versus at the rim versus threes. Unless something changes in the actual lines on the court, moving the three out, making the lane smaller. I don't know what it would be, but there's stuff we can do to mess with these numbers and see if we can get to more of a normalized level. The general nature of markets is that inefficiencies get picked apart. And right now, the biggest market inefficiency is that mid-range shots are not very good, and shots at the rim and shots from 3 are. And I always tell people it goes back to Dean Oliver with skill curves, which basically says, like, the more you do something in a given amount of time, the less efficient you're likely to be at it going forward. And the inverse is true, where the less often you do something, the most sneakier you are with it, the more efficient it is. And so I always tell people, like, that graph right here, like this, it's not going to stop until they're about near equal levels, unless, like, something is done in the within the rules of basketball. And I don't think that's going to happen. So, we still have a long way to go on just that change. As far as the changes that I see, in my position, I see the players that are, and this is honestly, I should love this. This is a way more important part of the answer. I'm seeing a much faster rate of flame out among the players who are stubborn, and I'm seeing players who are open, players who work hard, players who are smart, players who are willing to make changes that might make them, that might not be things they want to do. Where, if you grew up watching Kobe Bryant like I did, and you practiced your 18-foot turnovers in your driveway until it was 11 p.m. like I did, it was a bummer when my coach said, no, you can't do that in college. But at that point in my career, I was on my last legs, and I'm like, fine. I want to keep playing. And the players who get to the NBA are routinely, in my experience, not the guys who have ever been told you can't do this if you want to keep playing. And so, I think that the stubborn players are getting rooted out, and they're getting kicked out of the league, relegated to overseas. And then honestly, some of them are, I've had clients who were stubborn, were lottery picks, didn't finish out their first 4-year contract, went overseas, and they're bombing out overseas, and they're going to be done playing basketball by the time they're 26, 27 years old because they're stubborn. If anything, and this is sad on some level, because basketball is a vulnerable expression itself. That's why people love it. It's an emotional game. It's a beautiful game. But you got to treat this like a job, more so than even 5 or 10 years ago, where, if you're a poor performer at your job and you're unwilling to change, teams have just a shorter leash for you. And that extends to the college level too. And it's going to probably start extending to the high school level, where if you are unwilling to adapt to a changing game of markets, I'm sorry. I'm going to advise my clients, or if you're my client, I'm going to, you're probably not going to like me. You're probably going to dump me at some point. My services are not going to be, upheld. But if I'm working with, and I've worked with college teams in the past where, it doesn't matter how talented you are. If you're unwilling to change and you're not going to adapt, we're going to get the guy in who will. Because if it makes us a better team, makes us a better team. And that's our goal. So if you're a poor performer at your job and you're stubborn, see ya.
So one thing I'm starting to see more, at the grassroots level and in youth basketball is, and to a degree, it's good. We're taking these big kids, 6, 8, 14-year-olds and 15-year-olds, and instead of putting them on the block, we're teaching them to do more. So you're getting these 14, 15-year-old kids like Imani Bates and stuff like that, who are 6'9", long, athletic, can dribble, can shoot, can pass. All things that seem great. But I see that the higher the level you go, the more that's either a boom or bust type situation. You're either Kevin Durant and Giannis, or you're Thon Maker. So to a degree, I think, whereas the guys who are getting paid that are bigs in the NBA are either stretch guys or rim runners and rim protectors. So I think it's one of those, I don't know if it's people not quite understanding where it's going, or just the hope that, because this kid's 6'10" and can dribble, shoot, and pass, maybe he'll be KD. But I mean, where do you think bigs are going to be moving forward?
I think the bigs are going to be more diverse. They're probably going to be shorter because, frankly, the NBA has realized that Boban Marinovic is the all-time leader in player efficiency rating, PER, which I bring that stat up because as an analytics guy, I do not ever use that stat, but it's just a general production stat, right? Like, if you get a lot of points and rebounds, you're soon to be helping your team. Your PER is going to be high. And he can't stay on the floor because he can't defend anybody in pick and roll. And he's a guy who I've got a lot of respect for because he's a guy who's worked incredibly hard at his game. And it shows in every single way where he's so skilled, and he just has one Achilles flaw that he can't get over, and that's not on him. I don't want to seem like I'm bashing him. I got nothing but respect for Boban. But I think it's interesting too because there's also that third option, which is one that as far as, and I gotta say for my guy Thon Maker, Thon has one of the best reputations of being a hard worker in the NBA of anybody that I've heard. And I've never spoken with him directly, but I've worked for his agency, One Legacy, and they think the world of him. And they're very grounded people where they wouldn't say that if they thought that he was a dude who was out here and not fulfilling promises. I mean, I think Thon Maker's going to play basketball for a long time. It's going to scratch some heads, but he's a great hardworking kid, and he really cares about the game as far as what I've heard. Sorry, I just got to get that out of the way. I don't ever want to.
No, I mean, I've known Thon since he was in high school because he spent a couple years here in Virginia. Right. It wasn't at all to knock Thon.
No, I didn't take it that way either. I feel like we should mention that we know that there's a reason why he's on rosters,
Yeah, to me, it's just like I don't, I had a buddy who was one of those just go get bucket, 6'10", go bucket getter, could average 20, over 25 a game in college. Now he goes to the NBA and nobody's looking to bring a big off the bench where they're going to be like, okay, you're going to play for 15 minutes. We're going to feed it to you and let you go. They're going to bring an energy guy who rebounds, defends, or can stretch the floor. But
Right.
it's never like, you know, unless you're a superstar, I feel like you're not going to be a super productive guy in the NBA because you're big and skilled, you know, like I feel like there's got to be a happy middle ground.
Right, and I think that kind of goes back to the game of markets thing, where like there are players. I think a great example of a dude who could have fallen into the camp of guys who could have just been like, this is what I do, and take it or leave it. But Marvin Williams is a guy who was at that crossroads of like I was supposed to be a star, even though I never started at North Carolina. I'm supposed to be a star. I'm very multifaceted. I'm very skilled. And then at a certain point in his career, Marvin Williams made the decision where it's like, yeah, I can do all the stuff that's fun to do, and I can dribble and I can dominate a pickup game at the Y anytime I want to. But my team needs me to play this role. And I think that basketball is gravitating more so towards players who have role player tendencies, can make open catch and shoot threes, don't turn the ball over, can play defense, but also have a diversity of skill set enough where like you're never gonna see like a dude who's got just like a crazy bag, if you will. Like Chris Middleton doesn't have a ton of just crazy in and out dribbles, and like he's never gonna have like an Iverson moment where he just crosses up Jordan, but he's got enough where he keeps people off balance. He can do a multitude of things at any point, and it doesn't have to be aesthetically incredibly pleasing, but he's incredibly productive. So I think the big men in basketball, there's going to be more of a there's going to be more of a spotlight on the garbage man skills than ever before, where like I think like one of the biggest like falsehoods in all basketball is like a player like Tyson Chandler, DeAndre Jordan, isn't skilled or smart. It's like no, they are. First of all, they're incredibly smart. Second of all, they are insanely skilled, because it is, as a former big man, it is hard to set screens and get yourself open and your guy open consistently and get the rolling angles correct. Just because it looks easy doesn't mean it is, because they've been doing this for years. And that's why it looks easy. And that's why they're open so often. They're wide open. And you're like, gosh, it's so easy for Tyson Chandler to dunk the ball. All he has to do is catch it and dunk. It's like, yeah, because he's done all of his work in the gym for years and years and years and hours and hours and hours. And he's practiced this one angle, this one rolling thing, and he knows it so well that he's open more than guys who are faster than him and can jump higher than him. He just looks more open to you. So, I think that basketball is going to gravitate towards bigs who are open to not stubborn, going back to my previous point of, if you need me to be a better athlete, I got to get in the gym and be a better athlete. If you need me to be a better shooter, I got to get in the gym and be a better shooter. I think Christian Wood is a great example of a dude who was at that crossroads of his career and then bought in completely to being, a different style player than he was when he was mid-posting up. And now all of a sudden he's in line for a gigantic payday, and he earns every little bit of
it. Yeah, I feel you. So let's switch back. You guys use a different different mathematical stuff and different stats than traditional stats, of points, rebounds, assists, things like that. Which one of those stats do you believe is the most empty, like traditional stats, do you believe is the most empty in terms of wins? Which one does not lead to wins the way that people think it does?
Easy answer, rebounds. And this is once again bearing the lead. I literally do not put a single amount of stock into any individual rebounding number. What I mean by that is team rebounding rates when you're on the floor, I care about. How many rebounds you grab, I do not care about at all. I care about how many rebounds your guy gets. I don't care about how many you grab. A player who grabs 20 rebounds and gives up 10 offensive rebounds, the player I'm describing can exist, is unlikely to exist, but can exist. I find to be an unvaluable player. And so many, it kind of comes back to the core problem of basketball is that basketball has not great basic statistics, because basketball stats were taken from baseball stats, which were taken from cricket stats. And the stat exchange between basketball and baseball happened in a time where George Mikan was patrolling the paint. And they have not changed ever. Our idea of what's important has changed. Our idea of how much we're going to track has changed. But like the core idea of these 5 and these 6, if you count turnovers, which you should, these 6 stats are the basic stats. As far as like, points is important only within the realm of how many points did you score and how many possessions you had. Because the whole is important. The individual, if you had 50 points, that's probably good. If you had 50 points and your teammates had 10, That's awful. Unless your teammates can't play basketball, you screwed up. Congratulations on your 50-point game. We probably lost by 40. So to me, rebounding is just such, I care about how many you give up, and so therefore I care about how many contested rebounds you get. But the fact of the matter is that 4 out of every single 5 defensive rebounds in basketball aren't contested, and therefore are not at all valuable. The only thing that is valued in an uncontested rebound is you preserve the small chance you can have a transition opportunity. Because if a team isn't contesting a defensive rebound, they're probably getting back on from offense to defense. So your chance of getting a transition opportunity, you might as well, honestly, it's probably negligible. Just letting the ball go out of bounds and getting the full 24-second shot clock versus like 22 seconds, which sounds daffy, but that is how low I value uncontested defensive rebounds. Someone has to grab it. Whoever grabs it, I don't care. This is a fun question to ask people. Like, Jack, what is the most important element of a defensive rebound being tracked? It's that the offensive shot was missed. That is the only significant data point. You can't have a defensive rebound on a shot that goes in. And of course, controlling possession is important. But when you look into the actual nuts of the range of the best offensive rebounding team, in the NBA versus the worst offensive rebounding team in the NBA, it's not very far. It's much better to, in my opinion, because oftentimes teams have to decide when they're deciding, who's playing. Are we going to emphasize 3-point shooting with our 4? Are we going to emphasize the spacing with our 4? Or are we going to emphasize rebounding with our 4? Because that seems to be the most conventional trade-off as far as like what player do I play. And I found that when you emphasize 3-point shooting, you get this incredible passive growth where you get more shots at the rim. The stretch 4 himself doesn't score all the points, but he's the one who's making that all happen by spacing the floor better. And then you give up maybe 1 or 2 more offensive rebounds you wouldn't otherwise. Then they have to score the ball. And then on that one they do score, you're probably like, dang it. Come on, man. And it's that emotional response, but you got to remember that like the opportunity cost was very small. And that, even if you play the dominant rebounding 4-man, they're still going to score offensive points on the glass. I ran a calculation for Florida's team 2 years ago, and I found out that even though they were like the 310th ranked defensive rebounding team in college basketball that year, it only cost them about 1 more point per game versus the average defensive rebounding team in college basketball. So, 1 point, can it decide the game? It can. But, we can also make decisions that we score 9 more points over here while giving up 1 back here, and we're up 8 points in the net, So, to me, sorry for the rant. Like I said, former back-to-the-basket big man here. I grabbed a lot of uncontested defensive rebounds in my day. Rebounding, I just really box out. I don't care about the rest.
So everybody was ranting and raving during the Dennis Rodman episode of The Last Dance. Were you just over here screaming at the TV, talking about how he wasn't that important?
No. I mean, to me, the value of Rodman is more like if you look at what makes Rodman special is that he didn't care about stat padding. He just wanted to rebound. And if anything, his stat padding came from the sense he didn't want to shoot, which of course I don't love that he'd rather kick the ball out for try to get another offensive rebound and then to dump it in for 2. I don't love that, but the benefit of Dennis Rodman is so much greater than just his raw rebounding numbers. And if you look at it, Rodman is so far and ahead of everybody else in the modern era for defensive rebounds per game that just by default he must be grabbing double or triple the amount of contested rebounds, even if he's grabbing a certain amount of uncontested ones as well. He's adding so much value defensively, he's adding so much value with his smarts, and then the rebounding is also a great plus. But and also Dennis Rodman is someone that I deeply respect because he should have never played college basketball, never mind in the NBA based on his life story. So I wasn't rolling my eyes at but to me, it was almost bearing the lead. Where he's great because of the contested rebounds, not just because of the number of rebounds.
Yeah. And he was a terrific defender as well.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. There are so many reasons why Dennis Rodman is a valuable player, and also it's unfortunate. This is kind of where analytics is frustrating some people. Because would Dennis Rodman play in today's NBA? And frankly, I wish that there was more diversity of strategy in basketball, and that the lines in the court and then the inputs to the rules were designed in a way that you could play multiple strategies. I don't think it's good for the game that there's a dominant strategy emerging that's basically space and pace. I think that it's much better in the interest of the game to grow that slower players have a place in the game. Rebounders have a place in the game. Mid-range shooters have a place in the game. I don't know what these would look like, but I wish that the rule book was being tweaked in a way where, like, it's my job to make my players the most money I can. But on another level, I love basketball, and I don't want to see it become this, like, homogenous, like, lack of diversity and play style puddle where it's just like it feels like every single game is the exact same. I think that's bad.
So which one of the analytical stats do you think is the most empty in terms of determining wins?
Oh, I think I never, and this is going to make some people upset, but I don't even look at single number metrics. The only, what I mean by that is like your PERs, your win shares, VORP. There's always new ones floating around on Twitter that people are saying are the best ones, but like, basketball is, like, don't get me wrong, like those numbers were great and they were very innovative at the time. Like back in the day where it was like, who's a more important player, Marcus Camby or who's Jason Tatum's godfather from St. Louis, Larry Hughes. Who's more important, Larry Hughes or Marcus Camby? Those were great numbers to answer those questions. But in today's nuanced game where some teams are propping up players and some teams are holding players back as far as statistically, to me they're worthless. Where I remember there was a stat with I'm not going to mention who the player is. I think who I'm referring to, who's considered to be this like the next great thing, and I'm not sold. But there was this beat writer who was like, it doesn't matter if this player's team only scores 4 points per 100 possessions better over 50 games when this player's on the floor versus someone who's off the floor. We already know that his luck-adjusted net rating is second best in the league. And I'm like, so hold on. Like, someone's spreadsheet is more important than the actual 50-game sample size now? Like, we just assume this guy's figured out basketball to the point where he's luck-adjusted for literally everything? Because in my experience, I only, like, what people mean by that is, like, luck-adjusting is basically, like, and it's not very prevalent in a lot, and like you have to be very like higher level for most of this to be going on analytically wise. But like what people should try to do for luck adjusting is like, since there's variance in 3-point field goal percentage, they try to figure out like, if you take the shot 100 times, you score this many points, and then therefore we divide that number by 100, and that's how many points you were given for this attempt, make or miss. It's like, well, so can you identify like if the dude's hitting him in the shooting pocket? Can you identify if the dude gave him the ball half a second before he was expecting it or half a second after he was expecting it? Because he can still be the same amount of open, in those two situations. But it's a very different, way of going about things as a shooter. Rhythm is a thing. It's just because human beings are imperfect doesn't mean that we should try to like adapt and like smooth over those imperfections. It's like, to me, like luck adjusting for the most, I luck adjust so little, and even in my like very like nuanced like deep dives, to me luck adjusting just kind of like takes the flavor out of the game, and it almost like pushes out the stuff that we should be working the hardest to quantify, because that's where the value is. So sorry for the long spiel, but like any single number metric, we tracked everything. I've only found one single number metric that I actually like, and no one uses it. It's been banished to the smallest corner of the internet. And I show it to some people every once in a while, like, this is what you need. But, if you're only counting, like, the counting stats, and you think that your single number metric is gonna give you a good idea that can be used to, like, get an edge, you're probably already going to win that game regardless. Because, like, that's how big the error is, in my opinion, for, like, those metrics.
See, I never even heard of luck adjustment. See, this is why I got to talk to you more. What is the area of basketball you think needs needs to be supplemented with outside help the most?
Education. In my opinion, I think most high school coaches are more than proficient in teaching the X's and O's of the game. I think that most coaches have a little bit of flavor that they can add from their own experience and their own, be as a player, just like around the game, that can help players improve. But the thing that is most prevalent is, if you sell a player on a leak in their game being a feature of their game, that's something that's going to stay with them for years and years and years. And it doesn't matter how much good you're doing on the front end, that back end leak is probably going to sink their ship eventually. So I think that it's important for coaches to go to people who study this. And I by default, I do mean analytics, unfortunately. But go to people who study the game at a level, invest the time that it's not that they wouldn't be able to. So the demands of being a high school coach means they can't. If you can outsource some of your general thoughts of the meta of basketball, of like the macro strategies of basketball, I think that the game would be very much improved in that sense where, I can't tell you how many kids I've seen where I'm like, man, if they didn't do that one thing, they would be worth $100 million. And instead they're playing in the G League. I mean, that is seriously like how small these margins can be in basketball, where there's a kid who was a highly rated recruit where he's got almost everything going on, but there's one or two small things in his game that are inefficient that his trainers taught him were good. And that if you watch their games, defenses literally only try to bait them into doing those two things. Because like basketball is a game of self-selection. Where like if you think that you're getting 1.05 points per possession, like you don't even need to know the number. Because 1.05 points per possession is a good possession. It's not a great one, it's a good one. But if you think that you're scoring and like you've got like an emotional sense that like that is your reward for this input, and in fact it's like 0.8, which is a terrible PPP. If you do that multiple times in any given game, like your chances to win the game go down immensely, your production goes down immensely, and then therefore like the arc of your career, it's like the butterfly effect where like if you keep throwing away 2 or 3 possessions a game, your leash gets smaller, your minutes get reduced, and then if you keep doing it, like it doesn't matter how you feel about it, it's about how it actually is affecting the outcome of the game. And so I think that right now, like, and I always tell my clients, like, dude, I can't tell you the history of your game. I can't. I can't tell you more about your game than you know about your game, because, like, I can't tell you about the time where you were in 7th grade and there were 3 seconds to go and the coach drew up the play for you and he said, I'm going to hit it, and you got the ball, you pumped it, you took 2 dribbles to the left, you stepped back to 18 feet, you knocked down the shot, the gym went crazy, your teammates mugged you, and that's when you knew you loved basketball. I can't tell you about that. I don't know about that. But what I can tell you is that now you're 24, you make that shot 30% of the time. It's like your emotional aptitude as far as like how it feels when it go in. It's not 1-to-1 with the actual production of the shot. And like, I'm sorry that you guys, like, first of all, I'm happy you got such a great memory for basketball, but I'm sorry if that memory is like, almost like permeating into the rest of your game. Like I got off a call with a client that I think the world of. I really do. He's a smart dude. He's my type of guy. He's smart. He's hardworking. Like everything in his game, like his habits show up in every single form of his game. He's been a dream to work with. I asked him how many corner threes he took this season, and he gave me a number that was literally 10 times higher than the actual amount. And he's like, how could I be so wrong? And I told him, like, dude, how could you not be? You got shoot around. You got practice. You got skill work. You got, scrimmages. You got every other shot in your entire career just like bobbing around in here. And then in a small increment, in the increment you look forward to the most, where you have the most memories of specific instances, which of course are the games. You got this like small sliver. So like it would be weird if you were able to like Rain Man and remember exactly every single input of every single shot in every single aspect of your game. And like that's why it's good to have someone like me who's like, dude, the reason why you're so good going to your left and taking one dribble and fading away in practice all the time is because your defender sucks at it. And then in an actual game, you do the same move and you're bad at it too, So, sorry, once again, a very roundabout answer, but yeah, I think that education is important because like it's a grounding mechanism, and it's just like a baseline of like, education is probably never going to be like a baseline of education is probably never going to be the thing like that like catapults somebody into the NBA. But if it isn't there, it can absolutely be the thing that holds guys back from getting that NBA spot, that varsity spot, that D1 scholarship, that D3 opportunity. And like that to me is like we're playing with live ammo here with these players' careers. We can't be our gut feelings. It's not good enough anymore. We've got better. As much as I love going with my gut, you see this with me so many times. Like I say something, and I'm like, I think this is correct. I'm gonna look it up on my phone real fast, and I'm gonna make sure it's correct. It's like 9 times out of 10, I know my numbers pretty well. That 1 time out of 10, though, I don't know what you're gonna do with that piece of information. I don't want to be the wrong piece of information. So, I'm willing to even though it's like it's more tedious in my life, I want to make sure I'm getting the right info. So, like I said, this is live ammo. You never know what the one thing you say to a kid could alter their entire career for the good or for the bad.
So let me ask you this: when evaluating talent for somebody who's moving up levels, do you think that, and obviously every situation is different, but do you think that production at that lower level or upside for their ceiling, which one do you think tracks best for somebody who's maybe a scout for a team?
Production at the most valuable aspects of basketball tracks very well, because upside is generally related, in my personal experience, there's 2 types of upside. There's inexperience, which is he came late to the game, which is in most cases good, but the more ambiguous is like attachments, the attachment upside, like how much you care about basketball. You know, like are you raw because your coaching has been awful, or are you raw because you've had decent coaching but you just don't care? And so to me, like, you know, and this is, you're going to hit more home runs going with the guys who have raw upside than the guys who are producers. But like, you know, I'm in the business of making money. So I want to be correct in the most instances, not, you know, the most correct in an instance that gives me the same monetary reward as being correct about a ninth man, you know? So I look for, to me, the question is like, do you have a skill set that you can play this level today? And that can be 3-point shooting. That can be rim protection. That can be pick and roll ability. If you don't have one of those, I'm probably not going to bet on you. Because, like, you know, how much are you going to have to grow at one thing before you see the floor? And you have to see the floor to keep growing in the game, you know? So to me, it's always – and you got some bad misses. Like, you know, Giannis is a guy that I probably wouldn't have bet on coming out of Greece. But at the same time, like, he falls more into the inexperienced camp, clearly, than the apathy camp. To me, you know, the ones that we remember are the Giannis's and Daniel Bison, the dude who got killed by his brother on an island in the Pacific. You know, a guy like that doesn't care about basketball. We forget about them because, like, we see Giannis every day. You don't see, you don't see Michael Olakandi every day, you know?
You brought up Olakandi. Has your thoughts changed on RJ Barrett at all?
No. Nice kid. I'm rooting for him.
Okay.
And I always say, like, I always give a caveat. Like, he seems like a genuinely nice kid. I think he's a kid I love to work with, but no, he's got to make serious structural changes to his game to be successful in the NBA.
But he's so naturally gifted.
Is he?
I don't know, man.
But like, it's got to be asked. I mean, like, I'm sure you saw the graphs. Like I had a dude who like, he's like, I'm blocking you because I said that I didn't think that it was a sure thing that RJ Barrett would be a second star on a good team. And I pulled the graphs, and like, once again, the Knicks are not a great situation. I work with a guy who's on the Knicks. So like, I know everything about the dysfunction, but like, he is so far away from like every other single high volume player and like these tracking efficiency metrics that, like, if he's able to make it and it's just bad situation, awesome. But like, there's one thing I know about basketball players is that if you can only go one direction and you're that predictable, you better be the best at doing that thing. You better be honest. You better be Harden. And I think he's a far way off. And, you know, if he's working hard, that's great. But if he's just entrenching himself in bad habits and that's where the hard work's going, if he's working hard on the stuff that comes easy to him, it's just natural to him, it's probably bad. He's working hard on the stuff that is challenging to him, that is stressful to him, that he really hates, probably good, because he still doesn't have a right hand.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong, dude. RJ Barrett and I play 1-on-1. I don't score a point. I don't even touch the ball. That's fine. You know, like I said, like, I'm rooting for the kid. I acknowledge he's much better at basketball than I am. I don't know everything. But as far as like, would I have drafted him? No.
But you could be Jared Dudley in 1-on-1, right?
No.
All right, let's wrap it up here. I got some rapid fire questions for you, man. Just 5 quick ones.
Can I say something real fast to people who are watching?
I don't know. I mean, both of us like to talk, so.
I'm just gonna say, like, I hope that the people who are getting your content understand how spoiled they are by the incredible hoops content on that side, in that aspect of America, the Virginia, the Maryland areas. I mean, Adam does a great job. You know, you guys have just an incredible like foundation in your network in that area where, you know, I'm going through and, you know, for ePlay, like, we're doing, like I said, some pre-draft stuff. So I'm going through and I'm making a list of, you know, like the top 60 some players in the NBA, and like, you know, how do I know them? You know, like, if I want to pitch them, how do I get to them? And your name and Adam's name are showing up all over that list because you guys do a lot of work in an area of the country that's incredible at basketball. And, you know, as much as I don't think you'd ever want to move to Minnesota, or if I'm down in Texas, move to Texas, I would love to have somebody like you in my geographical area who I didn't even have to, like, vet. I can just, like, as I've already vetted you, because I know you're incredible at what you do, where I can just be like, hey, how good is so-and-so? You say he's not good. I don't have to send another text. If you say he's good, he's good. If you say he's not great, he's probably not great.
Yeah, I appreciate that, man. Yeah, and Adam's really lucky to be in that DC area. But yeah, we're blessed to have some great basketball around here, and it makes it really easy to get out and, makes me want to get in the gym and keep seeing kids. But, I think you'll see more and more kids from our area start to come into what you're doing. Because we got some future pros around here for sure.
Yo, I hope so. I really do. I mean, I was so, enthusiastic about the Virginia and the, the DC and the Maryland basketball scene that I was in touch with the D2 school out there, and I was pitching them, and I'm like, it almost makes business sense for me to give them a 50% discount on my services just so I have an excuse to fly out there for a week, like, because I'm a frugal guy and I wouldn't otherwise do it. So I'm like, this could, it's a few $1,000s that I'd be passing up. But like, also there's a lot of upside there. So also shout out to my former college teammate, Jared Nelson, who is, all around prep hoops. One of the great guys in the space. I'm sure, I don't want to gush about your boss in case he sees it, but just incredible thing you guys have going on from top to bottom.
Yeah, Jared's a good dude. I spoke with him the other day. They've been great to us. So go ahead and gush about them all you want, man. So let me get started with this. Who do you think is the most undervalued guy in the NBA?
Draymond Green. I think that people are prisoners to the moment with Draymond Green, and he might not continue. He might be on the downward slope of his career at this point, but he's the rare guy where if you have the star too, he fills in the blanks. And in fact, people think this it's a bug that when he's not the star, that the team isn't like winning 30 games a year. I think it's a feature because then you get the better overall pick. So I see only surplus value with Draymond Green. I mean, maybe his contract looks bad in a year or two, but like, the way that people sometimes talk about him, it's like, this guy was the second best player on a team that won 73 games. And I know Klay Thompson's on that team. I know. But Draymond Green, by some analytical like valuations, was more important than Steph Curry to that team, which doesn't make, and I don't agree with that, but like that is how impactful he was playing center for that team.
So now I see why you didn't text me back the other week when I was like, how do you like my Draymond Green takes? You were like, I'm not even gonna go there.
I was like, this feels like a business thing. I might get to it on Monday. Like, I'm not sure if I want to bog down a couple hours on my Saturday. It was nice in Minneapolis. I was outside with the boys, like social distancing with the boys. It wasn't like we were like, yeah, but I'm like, I'm not sure if I need any Draymond Green arguments in my life today.
All right. Well, we'll move on for that one before we talk for hours about it. What's your favorite basketball movie?
Oh, man, favorite basketball movie. Oh, man, there's so many good ones. Like, so, I mean, I don't know. Survive in Advance to me, it's not really a movie, but like Survive in Advance is probably my favorite movie. If you call it a movie, it's a documentary, obviously. It's a 30 for 30. It's probably my favorite media ever. It's one of the rare movies that'll make you cry. It'll make you laugh. It's just a beautiful piece. It's just a beautiful story it's sad. It's very tragic on multiple levels, but when I talk about basketball being a vulnerable expression of self, I think that it's very hard, to put your, like, I play basketball, man. Like, it's, when you're out there in front of all those people and the expectation is that you're going to do your job, and when you're not doing your job, you hate yourself. And when you are doing your job, it is the greatest feeling I have ever felt in my life. And I'm not married. I don't have a kid or anything like that. And I've heard those are probably better. But I mean, my best friend, he played, he played in Minnesota with me, and he had a tumultuous career in college like I did. And I still love the game, even though my body fell apart. He got into the system and he hated the game by the time he got out of it. And even he says, like, man, I wish I could just put in the warm up one more time. I wish I could just play in front of people one more time. And to me, I mean, Survive in Advance is so beautiful because it captures like a truly unique moment and a truly unique cast of people that's not too different from most teams that I played on, in the sense for like, like this, one of the things I hate is that like the forced family aspect of basketball, where it's like, we got to all dress the same. We got to all have the same haircut. We got to all, we got to all wear the same shoes. I'm like, nah, man, like, dude, when I played, like, I remember, dude, I played in front of Brad Stevens in an open gym, and I was wearing a Pink Floyd t-shirt. I put down a tomahawk in front of him, and I obviously didn't go to Butler, but like, it's the thing where, like, to me, like, what reason I love basketball is like, I could be myself and still be a productive member of a unit. And like, I think the Survive in Advance does a great job of putting together a cast of characters that are so unique but have so much love for each other. It's such a great story that, like, I recommend it. It's what I try to use to win over people in my life who aren't basketball people, to be like, this is why what I do has merit, you know? So that's my answer.
Who's your basketball GOAT? I think you mentioned him earlier, but
Jordan.
Jordan.
Yeah. My personal basketball GOAT is John Lure, because we both come from the same town of Long Lake, Minnesota. But as far as in the wider universe, it's Jordan to me.
What's your favorite thing to do outside of basketball?
Oh man, I mean, like PG-13 answer. Poker probably. I mean, you know that I love playing poker. At one point, a few years ago, actually, like when I was just starting out in analytics, I subsidized my life when like things were slow. I'd go and play poker, and then I had a run where I paid for like 6 months of my rent off my winnings. And so like, you know, that was ever since then. Like, you know, I'm not a great player. I'm a winning player, but not by much. But like, I love poker, man. It's so much fun to me.
And what's your favorite memory that you've had from basketball, whether it's your playing career, you know, your analytics stuff? What's your favorite memory?
Man, I mean, it's funny. Like, this was one that, like, you texted me the quick hitters beforehand. I'm like, I'm gonna and I still don't have a good answer, because like I get so invested in my clients, and I just, you know, and it's tough. It's almost corny, like how much I want to tell them, like, that I appreciate them, and I'm rooting for them. But like, I found that honesty is like the only way I can like talk to these players. Like, we don't have much in common outside of basketball in most cases, but like, I really care about them, and they care about their game. So like, you know, it's a good relation that way. But like, we know whenever, you know, the only answer I have to that question is like, the most recent good performance of one of my clients, you know, is always my go-to. And you know, of the highest of highs, I mean, watching guys you work with win, you know, close games to keep their college careers alive feels great. You know, watching guys have their breakout game in the NBA feels great. You know, dude, I mean, one of the best moments I ever felt was when a guy that was on a two-way contract signed an extension that I knew would like give him security for his life. Like, that to me was just like, and I didn't make a dime from that. That was one of my first ever clients, and I wasn't charging at that point. And I just, you know, I felt so good about the small little role that I might have played in that, in helping him transform his life. And he worked hard, and he was the one who deserves all the credit, but it felt good to know that I might have helped in that regard. So like, you know, it's one of those reasons why, like, it doesn't matter what team comes calling. I don't know if I'm ever going to work for a team. It's like, I love working for players so much, you know. It feels so edifying to help guys get secure in their lives, and to take care of their communities and take care of their families. So like, you know, every single time that a guy's a game that moves them a little bit closer to that, I'm walking on air, you know.
And last question here: what's your end goal with everything? Like, if you could, what's the dream job? What's the ultimate goal for you?
I mean, like, I like what I do right now, but like, you know, at some point, I joke with my buddy in the league office, Connor Williamson, that if your end goal in life isn't eating potato chips in an air-conditioned dark basement, what are you doing it for? But I definitely I want to have the flexibility to live, like, you know, somewhere out of the way. You know, if I can help bring basketball, you know, in my own brand to a part of the world that doesn't really play basketball, I'd love that. You know, there's a few countries that I've spoken to their national team about, you know, like potentially coming along and trying to help. And, you know, just pro bonos. I love traveling. I love being able to do what I do, and I love basketball. And so, like, you know, if I can hop on a flight and fly to Eastern Europe and be there for 3 months and meet the people and try to, like, you know, work with as many kids as I possibly can, that sounds great to me. But at the same time, like, I want to kind of like live in a cabin and just go fishing every single day once I'm done. Because like I get too invested, as you know, I get too invested in this. Like, I'm too competitive, and I love it too much. I can't let it go. And so, like, at some point I want to, like, do other things in my life, but like, while I'm doing this right now, like, I truly love what I do. And so, like, working 80 hours a week, 90 hours a week, there's nothing I'd rather be doing, you know? So I don't really have a good answer for you there. Like most of the questions you've asked me have been so good, I don't have a good answer, unfortunately.
Well, I appreciate you taking, you know, one of them hours of your 90-hour work week.
Yeah, for you, I could give you 10, unless we're talking about Draymond Green. Then we might have to do it. Or Jared Dudley. I'm sorry, Jack. And then also Kenny, if you're watching this, Kenny, you would bust Jack. I'm sorry, all right? Jack. No, you gotta tell the people. Jack was a good player. Jack definitely thinks Jack I think overestimates his leverage in one-on-one scenarios, and I think it can get him into trouble.
Look, I never said that I was better than Kenny Williams. Obviously, that would be the most far-fetched thing of all time.
True, you're not.
The question was what? Like, if I could score 18 points against him and play 20 minutes in 82 games, I could catch and shoot.
No, I mean, that wasn't the so no, the question was $1 million is on the line. Kenny's defending Jack for 20 minutes for 82 games, and both people know that if Jack scores 18 points, he gets $1 million, and if Jack doesn't score 18 points, Kenny gets $1 million. I got Kenny on that one. That dude would be on you like a dog for 20 minutes a game.
Look, man, I'm sorry. You do the math. You're the numbers guy. There's no way it's that difficult. Okay.
No, man, this is something that numbers could never track. Putting $1 million in front of Kenny and being like, lock up Jack. Like, he's like, dude, keep the money. I'll do it for free. Like, give me the money when I do it. But like, that's I'll do this pro bono just for the heck of it. Like, he would defend, like they would literally, that tape from those 82 games would go straight to Springfield. They would just have an exhibit like, this is the greatest on-ball defense you've ever seen in your entire life.
See, but Kenny can actually guard, so that'll be a little tough. Jared Dudley, on the other hand, come on, man, he's slower than I am. I'm sticking with that. I think in a foot race, I can hang with Jared Dudley, even with my fat, out of shape self.
I think the real answer here is that we should get that foot race on pay-per-view and raise it for COVID-19 research, because we'd have a vaccine by the weekend. People who would pay $100 to watch you two race, like I would be selling that to every. I would retire. I just sell it to every. I'd be like the middleman. I sell it to every single bar all over the United States, and it would just be, my life would be done. I'd be sitting in the basement eating potato chips, watching Jared Dudley dust you by 15 meters.
Just so everybody is aware, this is the conversations we have in between the serious basketball conversations.
Yeah, we gravitate towards Jared Dudley more than we should for I don't know what reason.
I can't stop laughing, man. Well, man, hey, I appreciate
Jack, man. Thanks for having me. This was fun.
Absolutely, man. We'll definitely be in touch, man. Good luck with everything, and let me know if you need anything.
Oh, hey, likewise here, man. I'm sure I'll be seeing you soon.
All right. Thanks, man.